Hello and welcome to another Warcraft 3 audio commentary. This is going to be a 1v1 game on Knollwood. I'm going to be doing a sort of really weird and a little bit of just sort of a for fun strategy here. And I'm going to be the human player, KingMagnar, and my opponent, timmay69, is going to be the random player. And we actually got pretty close spawns here. He spawned at the 6 o'clock, I've spawned at the I guess you would say the 3 o'clock maybe. So at any rate, we are going to have a pretty interesting human mirror match develop on this map. And neither of us really are going to be going for standard strategies. He is going to be starting with a paladin build order, and I am going to be just sort of winging it with a lumber mill first. No altar in sight, not even starting a farm or a barracks yet. So basically my plan is to get a Mountain King and a scout fairly early. I think I've scouted him fairly early. And just sort of go for some sort of weird tier 3 focused army. Most likely with some combination of air units, maybe knights or tanks. Really sort of depending on what I see from the opponent. And so we're going to watch this from my perspective, at least in the early goings, to see sort of my thought process here. So a late hero without footmen and with a Mountain King, the only thing I can really do is harass. I could probably try to militia creep. I'm going to go ahead and send 2 militia out because this is a 6-player map, 6 spawn points. I managed to catch his base on one of the first 2, which is pretty lucky since I don't have to run my militia all the way across the map and then run all the way back. He's gonna, if he goes that far, he's gonna turn into a peasant and it's gonna be slow moving. So that's gonna take a lot of time away from the wood harvesting. But I do have quite a number of wood workers, and at tier 2, I'm going to get the wood harvest upgrade just to make sure I've got plenty of wood to work with. I'm going to be getting a substantial amount of towers. And I'm going to be investing in some upgrades since I'm going to have to sort of play from behind because he's starting with footmen and paladin, so he's already finished his merchant camp, and he's actually sort of snuck by me and he's going for this other merchant camp up here. So now I sort of see his footmen, and I'm like, okay, he's not going for his green, he's obviously not going for his gold mine. And so my next thought is going for, since he already crept one shop, to go check the other one. And he is loaded up on circlets, and he got a claws of attack +6. So he is doing +12 damage now. His stats are just pretty crazy. He's got 5.8 armor. I've only got 2 armor. I'm at 700 hit points. He's at 850. He's at 30 strength. And again, I'm only at 24. Intelligence wise, he's got 360 mana. I've only got 225. So again, it looks like he's at 24 intelligence. I'm only at 15 on the Mountain King. So pretty much in every respect, his hero is going to just be superior. Also, he's level 2. So he's got most likely Divine Shield. Since I don't see the aura indicator. So anyway, and he's got these scout farms he's throwing up. So this guy, you know, he hasn't shown me so far in this game. He hasn't shown me that he's like really all that, you know, crazy of a player. It doesn't look like he was really close to surrounding me at any point. But he isn't really totally noob because he is getting some pretty decent items. The circlets are very cost effective. And again, he is going to be loaded on items here, so plenty of circlets. He sells his town portal. He doesn't feel like he needs to worry about town portaling as he only sees a Mountain King. I'm harassing, so he probably feels pretty safe. But now he's got a Boots of Speed, and I don't immediately realize that that he would buy that. I saw all the circlets, and I saw the claws, and I was like, okay, you know, that's whatever. But him picking up the Boots of Speed is going to allow him to do something that, and then me sort of, I should have probably used Stormbolt there to wake those creeps up instead of hitting it, because I took a lot of damage. And with the Boots of Speed, it's going to allow him to run me down. Now this is going to take him quite a bit of time to run my hero down. Again, why I sort of went back towards him, I didn't realize he had the boots of speed, in which case I could have just run away from him, but as it is, he's going to be able to chase me down and get, you know, a handful of hits on me and eventually kill me before I can run into a creep camp. So he's going to get another free kill for those boots. I'm going to make him pay for it a little bit with Stormbolt, but it's just really going to be delaying it. I thought I might be able to get to these rock columns, but those boots of speed and all those circlets really got him, and then he hit level 3. So now this is pretty, it's looking pretty terrible. He's two full levels ahead of me, and he's loaded with good items. He's got map control now. He can pretty much do whatever. If he's got defend, he can take this camp pretty easily. Without defend, he does have defend. Okay, so I was gonna say without defend, he's gonna take a lot of damage, but since he has defend, he's gonna be pretty much okay. And again, my hero's having to, I'm having to respawn my hero, so you know he's not really in much danger there. And he's got, like I said, he's got tons of mana. So and now the one bad thing is his item, his inventory is loaded down. So he, you know, depending on what the item is, he's either gonna pick it up, or it's a greater heal potion, so he can go ahead and pick that up and use it, and then, you know, not have to drop and either destroy or sell an item. But it turns out, I guess he's just gonna leave that circlet there and keep the greater heal potion. So that's a little bit bizarre. Personally, I probably would have just went ahead and used the potion and picked the circlet up, but since he's going to have Divine Shield, he's probably not really in much danger of really needing that greater heal potion. But at any rate, so I'm coming to his main base to poke around and make sure, you know, what kind of tier 3 late game matchup I'm looking at. And I see him throwing up 2 workshops, and he is also throwing up a Griffin Aviary. Now he militias everything trying to chase my Mountain King, sort of messes himself up. So I realize if I go strictly mass air, you know, there's going to be a moment where if he goes for siege engines with the rocket upgrade, if he gets some Dragon Hawks to go along with that, mass air is going to be very, very risky for me to do. So I come in here and I want to slow down this second workshop as much as I possibly can. Again, he's not quite tier 3, so he can't make siege engine just yet. But he is going to get the second workshop up. I'm going to kill some workers at least, so that's going to be pretty solid. And again, he doesn't have any anti-air units at the moment. He is going to pick up an orb of fire. So, and that's going to be, he's going to be doing decent damage, which is really weird for a paladin. But again, he's got 3 circlets and claws plus 6. And again, I don't have any healing. So, and again, couple that with sort of poor micro, and he is going to snag some kills that I should have been able to avoid. But not right here, luckily. But maybe here in a second. Yeah, this Dragon Hawk is coming back. I definitely need to keep him back with only 46 hit points. But like I said, I realize I need to keep the pressure on. I need to fight him right now because I've got the air units. And he doesn't really have the anti-air. So here's another unit trying to pull this Griffin back, and he gets the last hit. Again, the poor micro on my part allowed him to do that. And again, like I said, this is really sort of a risky moment. The one rifleman, you know, the one Dragon Hawk, I've already taken some damage from his paladin. So I'm going to pull back and sort of heal up and, you know, get a Staff of Sanctuary, which is going to be pretty solid in this matchup, in any matchup really, but with these tier 3 air units, 2 attack upgrades, and maybe a 3rd attack upgrade now. I think I've already got the, I don't know if I've gotten the Animal War training yet. Actually, I don't think I do, looking at the numbers here. So, but now he's got siege engines. Yeah, he doesn't have the air attack upgrade yet, though, for the siege engine. So this is a good news for me. And I do notice it when I'm in range that he's not using the siege engines to attack. So, he's gonna go ahead and try to aerial shackles this Griffin and heal it, and he's doing a decent job. And I'm gonna bring my own Dragonhawk in here and kill his. So here's the issue with his sort of strategy. He's only really getting anti-air out of the Griffin Aviary, and he's only got one, and I've got 2 Griffin Aviaries myself. Now again, since I saw that he's going for siege engines and I saw that he's got 2 workshops, I realized that if I focus too much on air units, I leave myself vulnerable to him sort of hard countering that with siege engines with the rocket upgrade. And then, you know, if he just runs to my base with a bunch of siege engines, it's going to be a little bit tricky. In a base race, his siege engines would beat my, pretty much are going to beat my Griffin Dragonhawk combination. So I throw up a barracks. This also allows me to get animal war training. And the other thing it allows me to do is get knights, which have a little bit better damage against fortified targets, which include the siege engines. They're fast moving, movement speed, and also they have better damage against his hero, which also is going to come into play. And again, if he starts to get riflemen, knights pretty much dominate riflemen. So really what I have to worry about, but I'm not really all that worried about, is if he goes, if he transitions into Griffins, just mass Griffins and Dragonhawks, or, you know, mass Griffins and siege engines and a handful of Dragonhawks. Because at a certain point, if he can just really control the air, then the knights are going to be, obviously if he's got Griffins, the knights are going to be bad if I don't have, you know, any kind of anti-air myself. So, you know, it's always sort of this delicate balance. And again, he's sort of over committing to the siege engines. Now the siege engines are incredibly strong, but again, like I said, I noticed that he was getting siege engines. I've already got 3 attack upgrades on the Griffins, and the attack upgrades for the Griffins, the Dragonhawks, and the Knights are all shared 1 upgrade. So I've got 3 attack upgrades on all my units, and including the militia. Actually, they share the attack upgrades as well in militia form. So should I choose to militia, they're going to have 3 attack upgrades. So I'm really focusing on DPS, and yeah, Knights. He really isn't gonna, what he's gonna be lacking in his army isn't anti-air. What he's gonna be lacking is the ability to kill my Knights, which is gonna sort of come from the buildings that he's got. He's only got 1 aviary, and he's committing the aviary to build Dragonhawk riders, which is a good idea against air units, obviously, but again, it's going to leave him vulnerable to Knights, as he's not making Griffins, and he's not really making anything, not making casters, not really making anything to counter the Griffins. So I see he's got all these siege engines. I'm going to immediately pull back here, and also I've picked up a Paladin, so I can go ahead and get some healing off. Again, he doesn't have a Mountain King that I've seen, so, and again, his army isn't really such that I need to worry about the Paladin getting focus fired. So we're going to have another battle. I'm not really going to do a great job of microing. I was moving my whole army and not really microing what I need to be, but I managed to just, for the situation, the positioning, I was able to aerial shackles him over the trees and avoid his siege engines. So here's the thing, he just doesn't have anything to deal with the Knights. He's got a really solid counter to my air units, but I don't have to fight him with my air units. I can pull those back as soon as I deal with any potential air units he's got. And again, pushing my base is, and again, you see the 3 attack upgrades on the militia. That's pretty significant, 15 to 19 damage. I don't know what it is with 0 attack upgrades, but you could look. It's probably like 10 to 12 or something like that. But again, pushing my base, you know, with these siege engines, the one vulnerability is if they get surrounded by units, there's not anything they can do. Normal damage like Knights and obviously militia are going to be really good against the siege engines. My base build was such that it wasn't really all that easy for him to get in position with all those siege engines. So yeah, he really wasn't able to really take advantage of how strong the siege engines are, in my opinion. And again, I had towers out there that were helping out as well. So again, I don't think the Paladin really shined in this mirror match as far as a first hero. He, while he's stacked up with items, he, he probably would have much rather this be a level 4 Mountain King, is my guess. And then maybe get a Paladin second, something like that. Or just go the standard, like Archmage, Mountain King, Paladin, whatever. But again, I don't really know. I guess the draw maybe just for fun, or maybe likes the Paladin, whatnot. But it's not. It doesn't. It's really hard to carry this particular matchup with the Paladin. Like if you're against Undead, that's one thing, because you can use Holy Light offensively against Undead, so you've got a little bit more options. Whereas against human, it's just a heal spell. So the enemy can play around that. It doesn't really have good synergy with siege engine massing, because you obviously are not going to be able to Holy Light a siege engine. And as far as with Dragonhawks, it did some work with the Dragonhawks, keeping the shackling Dragonhawk alive at one point and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of like securing kills, the Paladin just really doesn't do it against human. Obviously against undead, or if I had like an undead, like a Dark Ranger or something weird. But as my hero, that will be vulnerable to Holy Light, but that was just not the case. So you pretty much see one hero kill apiece here. Unit kills by far favored me, even though he made more units. The largest army was in my favor there at 65. So yeah, you really need to be in any game type, really trying to pay attention at different sort of timings in the game. If you're not going to sort of scout all throughout the game fairly diligently, you should at least be scouting at a few sort of specific points. The first point is early game, and again, on a big map like this, it's even more important, in my opinion, to find the opponent, because there's so many more sort of options for them to expand. They've got more spawn points that you could potentially expand at. There's like so many creep camps. They could do militia creeping on a mercenary camp. They could do a fast expansion. They can do what he did here, go for the items, go for the shops, so you can buy circlets. There's a fountain that's either healing or mana. If you look at it in the fog, sometimes you can tell it's kind of not super easy to do it, but if you look very closely, you can sort of figure out if it's a mana fountain or a heal fountain. But so yeah, there's a dragon to kill there as well for that. And then there's the golems, which are pretty difficult to creep in a solo scenario, but there are some heroes that are pretty good at it, like a Tinker, for example, or whatnot. But those are sort of minor points. The major point here in this game, and sort of the takeaway, is the usefulness of scouting, and also the usefulness of really understanding the armored damage type. I know it's something I sort of harp on a little bit, but it's a very big part of the game of Warcraft 3. Not just potentially getting attack and armor upgrades on your units, but the actual armor and damage types actually have a bigger sort of impact, even than maybe 0 armor compared to 3. I think it's probably close at that point, maybe, but you still really need to understand, like, what's piercing good against, what's medium, you know, armor good against and all that stuff. So heavy armor, fortified armor, hero armor and damage, you know, all that stuff is a very important, you know, magic damage. You know, what armor is going to be vulnerable to which attacks is going to help you, or it should be guiding what you do in the game. Now again, there's certain circumstances where you're either not going to have the right sort of the optimal attack damage, or you know the positioning is weird, or you know whatever the case may be. For you know maybe certain units are already damaged, so you'll target them first. But otherwise, you know, all things being equal, understanding the armor damage types should be guiding you which units you should be focusing with your particular army. Like, say you've got a bunch of knights and a bunch of griffins, and the enemy has a bunch of, we'll say, knights and riflemen. You know, riflemen are going to take extra from the normal attack damage of the knights, and knights are going to take extra being a heavy armor unit against the magic damage of the griffins. So you will want to be focusing those units on the respective weaker targets, because it's going to amplify the damage that you do, and hence kill their units faster in theory, which is going to limit the damage output that they can do to you. It's going to level your hero, and it's generally going to put you in a better position to win the game. All other things being equal. Now, if the positioning is, you know, really weird, you might get some free shots on the rifles with everything, and then, you know, they try to micro it away. Or maybe their hero is low, then you might go for the hero, but... and again, the knights would be a decent unit to target the heroes. The griffins, you know, not terrible, but not quite as good in terms of the damage percentage. If you're rushing a base, magic damage and piercing damage are generally going to be weaker unless they have like unupgraded watchtowers, unupgraded guard towers, or unupgraded burrows. Those types of buildings are going to be vulnerable to magic damage. Also, uprooted ancients. If you see an ancient of war uprooted, or you see an ancient of ages, eternity uprooted, or any of the ancients uprooted, they're going to have heavy armor as they're uprooted, which means they take a lot of damage from magic attacks. So that's, you know, one thing to consider. But all that being said, you know, you still have to sort of understand creep patterns, scouting at specific points in the game, like early game, mid game, maybe more towards late game. The reason that is going to help you, even with sort of minimal effort, is just because what you can potentially see from those timings. You know, as soon as I ran into his base, I saw that he had footmen already. I didn't really see an arcane tower. His base didn't really look walled off. I don't remember if I saw his paladin or not, but I could potentially have possibly seen his paladin. If he was throwing up a blacksmith, I would have seen that. If he was throwing up towers, I would have seen that. Really early tech, early arcane vault. You know, all these things you can see. You can get a snapshot of their base, you know, at certain moments. You know, whether it's 2 minutes, whether it's 5 minutes. You know, you see, you know, different things at those timings. But most likely, you're going to see if they're going tier 1 or not, if they're going to barracks or not, if they're getting an early shop, if they're getting an early tech, if they're getting a defensive tower, you know, what kind of layout their base is, generally. Potentially, you might see their first hero, and, you know, and those are all big things, because certain heroes can sort of follow certain general trends. The paladin was a little bit weird. That's not a hero you're most likely going to be harassing or rushing with, I don't think, in solo. So it sort of was safe to assume he'd probably be creeping if I would have seen his paladin. But other than that, you know, you're going to know, okay, he's probably going, if I don't see a blacksmith, He's going to most likely be getting footmen if he's got a barracks this early. It could be sort of a decoy, or just a placeholder to getting like knights or rifles, or even just the animal war training upgrade for griffins later. That's something that could potentially throw you off a little, but if you scout again a little bit later, you're generally going to understand, okay, if I see a handful of footmen, okay, I know he's probably going to be going for sort of a ground army, more mixed. He's probably going to be either creeping or expanding or both. And yeah, so you play accordingly based on that, on what you see. Now, when you scout in the mid game, hopefully you will wait until you think the moment has passed where they're going to be getting their tier 2 production buildings, so you can see where they are, see how far along they are, and which particular buildings, if any, he's getting. So you're going to see, okay, he's getting 2 workshops and a Griffin Aviary. He is not going to have access to sorceresses, priests, or spellbreakers unless he goes ahead and gets that Arcane Sanctum. And likewise, he also won't have access to Magic Sentry, so that's sort of a very subtle point. But if you're going to do some kind of like mortar team invisibility strategy or something weird like that, if he's got a tower or 2 up in his base and he's got Magic Sentry, that's going to alert him quicker and stuff like that. But those are sort of fringe examples. Really, the main thing is seeing his production buildings. If you can cancel those, that's good. If not, just being aware so you can make the correct units going forward is very important. Because if I would have just strictly focused on, let's say I just went mass Griffins there at the end, or mass Dragonhawks, oddly, that would have been severely punished with the siege engines if I didn't get knights, and also if I didn't get the animal war training upgrade that is offered at the barracks. So all these things sort of work hand in hand. If I didn't have knights, I just wouldn't have a counter. I just really wouldn't have a good counter to his siege engines. I guess 12 militia with 3 attack upgrades isn't terrible. Having those towers there isn't terrible, but just to be safe, having some knights was pretty useful there. And again, it allows me to pressure his heroes sometimes. They do okay damage against buildings. They're fast moving, so yeah, a handful of knights, it wasn't really going to be all that sort of problematic for me to get. And again, just being a little bit more versatile at the expense of having to get a barracks as well, having to spend the resources on getting some knights. Is you might think it spreads you a little bit thin, but it really depends on the scenario. Obviously, he didn't really have the optimal army to fight mine. If he'd had invested a little more in either riflemen or alternatively just more Dragonhawks and Griffins, he probably would have been better off. Just because, like you saw in the battles, as soon as I realized he doesn't have a great counter to the knights, I don't really have to fight him with my air units in range of his siege engines. It's just going to generally be a waste. So, just due to the fortified armor and piercing damage, multiple targets thing that you can do there with a siege engine. But otherwise, you really just need to be able to take a glance at the enemy's base and have a pretty good idea of what they're going to be doing. Now, sometimes you might miss a building. Sometimes they will build a building not in their main base or something like that. You might just miss it. Your scout might run to their army, get killed before you get inside their base to see. And you generally want to be careful losing too many workers scouting like that, or any unit that you scout with. But yeah, that's generally generally some of the major points to take away from both this game and sort of just as a rule. You know, if you're gonna do minimal scouting, at least try to hit, you know, certain points early game, mid game, and then potentially late game and expansions, gold mines that you think are or know are already crept and would be a likely target for an expansion for both you and your opponent. So, because again, all the armor damage type stuff, I mean, it doesn't completely go out the window, but if you're like, if you've got 40 food worth of units and they've got 80 food worth of units, a lot of that stuff's going to sort of just go out the window because they have a lot more options if they're that far ahead in army size. They could have like they could just mass like, a lot of times mass one unit. Like if they have mass griffins at 80 food and you have, you know, 40 food with Dragonhawks, it's, you know, I think Dragonhawks are 3 food, I think Griffins are 4, at most 5, so that, you know, that's gonna be like 1 food difference. The cost is substantially different, but in terms of food wise, if you're at 80 food of Griffins, you know, that 40 food of Dragonhawks is not really going to be doing the job, most likely. So, especially with a Paladin. So, it doesn't exactly scale all that well in that situation. So yeah, always need to be aware of expansions, potential expansions, unit choice, hero choice, all these things, even down to the items on a particular hero. You don't want to be focusing like a Paladin level 4 with a greater healing potion, or, you know, an invulnerability potion, because they already have, if he's level 4, he most likely has either 1 or 2 points in Divine Shield, which is very good at you know, it prevents damage completely. It makes him spell immune. So, you know, they can, if they're in the middle of like some kind of AoE attack, or if they're surrounded or whatever, what have you, a lot of times they can just cast Divine Shield, go ahead and, you know, consume a potion, go ahead and use an invulnerability potion or whatnot, or just Town Portal, whatever. You know, all that stuff, you know, it's going to be hard to bring down that Paladin in that respect, but again, one of the big things is just army size and positioning. So you want to try to focus on those when you can. Scout when you can, so if they are trying to get an expansion up, you can react accordingly. If they're not, you can react in different ways, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going to pretty much wrap this one up. Like I said, I've gone through the scores here in terms of experience gained. I did end up gaining more than him, but I had a second hero and had substantially more unit kills than he did. So now I think actually a solo hero would give you a better experience gain, just because of the sort of the game mechanics, where you get bonus experience if you're rocking a single hero. But the problem is, once you hit like level 3 or 4, it becomes really difficult to hit that next level, and that next level is really where you get your boost. You know, you don't get a boost from getting halfway to the next, to getting level 5.5. Generally, you're just going to be, you know, getting that reward when you actually hit level 6. You're going to have access to an ultimate or another regular skill, potentially leveling up Stormbolt, Thunderclap, or Bash. So, but anyway, this is going to be ScryMind signing out.